Hey friends, I'm back, and in today's video I'm giving you a recap of my second trimester and how I have progressed through it. If you want to know the realities and what they don't necessarily always talk about, stay tuned for today's juicy video. Give it a big thumbs up because it really does support our channel. Don't forget to hit subscribe and tap that bell so you get notified for our uploads every Monday and Thursday, and let's get right into today's video. If this is our first time meeting, thank you so much for clicking on the video. It really does support our little channel. My name is Becca and I'm currently a mum to three. I have a 5-year-old, a 3-year-old, and a 1-year-old, and we are pregnant with bub number 4. So the age gap between my youngest son Phineas and this baby is going to be 18 months, which isn't the longest of times for your body to recover from having a bub, let alone it being the 4th time that we've reached this stage of our gestation. So for me personally, it has been really tricky on my body. It was interesting when I did my recap of my final first trimester, there were a lot of things that I wasn't going to miss in establishing a pregnancy besides those few happy moments. So if you haven't watched that video, I would highly recommend it. For the second trimester, it used to be for me such a time where I was just thriving. I was at a point of my pregnancy where it was established, I had my energy back, I wasn't too big that I was uncomfortable, anything like that, but this time has been a little bit different. My third trimester went over the months of November, December, and January, which in Australia is our hottest part of the year, and being pregnant during that time is no joke, really hard. I had always heard about people being pregnant during that time and it being quite difficult, but experiencing it for myself, the heat really just drained my energy, and it is so different the more kids you have and the more that they expect and possibly demand of you, versus when you're pregnant for the first time or maybe even second time. You have times that you can relax, and it has been quite difficult to navigate, and I've received news throughout this second trimester that has made life just that little bit more complicated in being the best mom that I can be. For the first time in any of my pregnancies, I have been experiencing lightning crutch, where you get a lot of intense pain in your pelvic region. I have never experienced it in any of my pregnancies. I've experienced just the heaviness that happens in the latter half of the third trimester when bub really does drop and you're getting prepared for labor, but I've never been at the point of my pregnancy where it physically hurts to take a step. And during probably midway through the second trimester, that has happened to me, and I have even had to get my obstetrician to write a letter for work because being a teacher, we have playground duties and I am physically unable to do them, which is really difficult because the one thing I loved about my pregnancy with Amira and Zoe was that I felt so strong and so fit, and like I could defy all of those pregnancy stereotypes and I was going to do everything, and I worked until later in my pregnancy because it was all good. But this pregnancy has really humbled myself and is making me readjust the way that I view myself being a pregnant mom, especially to 3 other kids. I struggle with the grocery shop. I cannot make it to the end of it without being in a lot of pain, and I 100% have a waddle on, not because bub is low into the birth canal, but just because it helps the pain to relieve itself. Also during the second trimester, my pelvic floor really has started to weaken itself, and if you've been following on my fortnightly uploads, you would know that that is something that I've spoken to my obstetrician about, and she has said to me that she thinks that it's past the point of physiotherapy and that I will probably need to get corrective surgery for it. And being 30 and having this issue is really hard to deal with because it just feels like I shouldn't be dealing with it, but I think my labor with Zoe in particular was what weakened my pelvic floor, and then having a miscarriage and a DNC afterwards, it didn't help the situation, and then giving birth to Finn and not having a lot of time to recover after Finn because I fell pregnant when he was 9 months old. It's just not been the best of situations for my body in particular. So I'm having to take the precautions to make sure that I feel confident with my everyday life, but it has been hard to deal with on a daily basis because it's not something that's widely spoken about. And I wish that I didn't have this problem, but I do, and I am just having to navigate through it until I can get it fixed. And then the really sad news that I got, which made me feel just really low in my spirit, was the fact that I can't pick Phineas up anymore, which really sucks because he's not walking, he's on the verge, he's like monkey crawling over everything. And it's hard now because being school holidays, Michael's not at home to help me, and I'm having to come up with creative ways of picking him up. So like instead of changing him on the change table, I'm now changing him on the floor, and then I'm minimizing how often I pick him up and from what position. So I generally try and get him to stand up, and then I'll pick him up from that position rather than scooping him up while he's like sitting on the floor. It's really hard, and there's been moments where I miss being just his mom, and like I miss carrying him in the baby carrier and just enjoying all those moments. So I'm really having to be mindful and present that I'm not missing out on his early years just because I'm pregnant with this baby. And I know it's going to be really hard to juggle that throughout the next couple of years pretty much, but it's something that I'm mindful of, and I'm wanting to make sure that I get the most out of both of them. I think the 2-year age gap really is great between Amira and Zoe and Phineas. I really enjoyed that because they got to a point of independence, and I felt like they were ready to have a sibling, where I don't know if I'm in the same headspace when it comes to having an 18-month age gap. So if you have a small age gap in your kids, please comment down below any tips or tricks or truths about it, because it really is something that I'm a little bit worried about, to be honest, but there's nothing that I can do about it. I just have to navigate through it. Thankfully, I don't have gestational diabetes. That was something that I had to get done during this trimester, wondering if my body was gonna react to this pregnancy any differently, and thankfully it hasn't, which made Christmas really enjoyable. But I am at the point where I'm having to sit on a ball just because my joints are really starting to hurt, especially like my hips and like my lower back, and I find just sitting on a ball is a lot easier. I'm not necessarily using it to try and prepare myself for labor. I'm not like doing circles or bouncing up and down. I am, however, being really mindful of like leaning forward, because with Amira's pregnancy, because my torso is so short, I would recline a lot to like open up my core so that Amira would be comfortable. However, and I don't know if this is like scientifically backed up, but when I went into labor, she was spine on spine, and I feel like that's because she was so used to reclining backwards. That was the position she was in. So with Zoe, I was really mindful, especially of like this latter half of the second trimester and absolutely all of the third. I would lean forward. That way gravity was making sure that she was in a good birthing position and I didn't have any problems with her. So that is something that I'm mindful of, even though I have a small torso, is not to necessarily recline, but even just to lie down on my side, which leads me to the fact that my circulation in my feet has also been a problem this trimester. I feel like my body, it feels like it's falling apart, which I know it isn't, but it's just been a bit of a tricky trimester for me physically. So I keep my legs up, I sit on my glider with the footstool to make sure that my circulation is going. If the kids are playing somewhere, I do try and sit in a comfy area because I find sitting down a little bit tricky, but I am trying to be mindful of like playing with them and being interactive. So it's just one big juggling act, and I am so thankful for this little life. And I'm very thankful that our dream of having 4 kids is a reality for us. But at the same time, it doesn't take away from the fact that it really is a bit of a mind game mentally and physically. I feel like all pregnancies are like that. I didn't have this sort of a mind game with Amira because she was our first kid. We never experienced any loss, like miscarriages or anything like that. And I feel like the more you progress and the more that happens, the more you're aware of. And for me personally, I'm a big planner, and so there's a part of me that always expects the worst but hopes for the best, which I know is probably not a good mindset, but it just helps me not to get completely surprised if something does happen. So now that I'm 28 weeks, we are officially into the 3rd trimester, and I am so excited to be on the countdown. When it comes to Bub, so much development has happened. This little baby is very active. It loves to kick and punch and move and groove, and is just constantly active, which is lovely. There was one day, I think it was the 30th of December, because we were heading out to a family event, and I realized when we were driving to the event that I hadn't felt anything for a while, but I think Bob was just sleeping, which is good. But they are so super duper active. But just so that you get a bit of a picture on how big they are before I give you a bump update, I use an app called Ovia Pregnancy, and it has a hand and foot comparison of what they will be like before they come out. So the blue is the current size, and the outline is the size that it will be when it's earthside. Blue is not a gender choice, it was just a calming choice. I have no idea if this baby is a boy or a girl. So I'll show you their hand and their foot. So right now we call this baby Smush, and it's about the size of a Hawaiian pineapple. And it's funny because it says you may start to feel a bit of heartburn, which is hilarious because I've been feeling it for like the last 10 weeks. Like I said, I'm super thankful to be getting to the 3rd trimester of this pregnancy. I'm really excited. It has been an honor and a blessing to do it, but at the same time, it also has been a little bit of a challenge for me personally. So thank you so much for tuning into today's video. I will show you a bump update before I go. If you have enjoyed today's video, please give it a big thumbs up. It really does support our channel. Don't forget to hit subscribe and tap that bell so you get notified for when we upload on Mondays and Thursdays, because this parenting gig doesn't come with a rule book. We only have each other. And I'll see you in my next video. Bye.